Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation? The podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by Outlast Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have Daniel Trabucchi. Daniel Trabucchi is Senior Assistant Professor at the School of Management, Politecnico di Milano. He co-authored Platform Thinking, Read the Past, Write the Future. His research interests are focused on innovation management, especially digital two-sided platforms and digital services. He co-founded Symplatform in 2018, the international conference on digital platforms that aims to match scholars and practitioners in the field. He co-founded and is scientific director of Platform Thinking Hub, the community of innovation leaders that aims to foster innovation through platform thinking. He has authored more than 70 scientific articles, including peer-reviewed journal articles, conference proceedings, and book chapters. Apart from academic research, he teaches innovation and project management at various levels, from bachelor's to master's, MBA, executive MBAs, and corporate classes. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I'm so excited for the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. I definitely look forward to it.
Well, why don't we dive right in then? What, in your mind, is innovation?
Well, this is a good question. I teach innovation management, so I've been teaching on the one side and wondering what is the right or the best or the current answer to this question quite often. And thinking about this podcast, I thought that, in my opinion, innovation is kind of the spark of life, which means that as in our life, we need to change continuously. Everything changes around us continuously. It's a flow. You cannot really stop it. And on the one side, that's the beauty of life. That's actually what makes us alive. But at the same time is also what is challenging us continuously. Because changing means being outside our comfort zone, means changing our habits, our daily routine, and even the kind of people we talk with. And this is kind of keeping us alive. So I do believe that a life without innovation cannot really be possible. So I think that innovation is what is keeping us alive.
The spark of life. I love that. So you described where you see innovation and how it plays out in life and in all the aspects of things. How do you incorporate that into how you talk about and teach it? Does your viewpoint of that come through in the educational side of things?
Yeah. Well, with this question, you bring me to my latest project. I've been just publishing a book that is titled Platform Thinking. And it's a bit the summary of the last 10 years of research that started with my master thesis, trying to understand how mobile apps back then actually had a business model without the users paying for that. We go back in 2012, 2013, and having services that were completely free, not in the internet, so not as a website, but in your pocket was something strange at a certain point, in a certain way. And 10 years later, we're talking about platform thinking. So a kind of mindset that is triggered by platform. And what I love about it is that the kind of words that I said defining what is innovation, in my opinion, are actually very coherent with what we lived in these 10 years. If you think about your daily life, you've got digital platforms surrounding every aspect of your life.
Right.
We are talking through a digital platform. Right. You call a taxi with a platform. You order a pizza with a platform. You book your holidays with a platform. You listen to music. You watch a movie. I can go on for hours with that. But if we stop the time and we go back, just in 2013, for example, 10 years ago, we would see all those companies actually active, and some of them were even big on the market. But the vast majority of people in the world were not doing those daily activities through platforms. They were just enjoying services. There was a crazy time in which people to get a pizza were simply leaving their houses and go and get them. or that moment in time in which you went out for a run and you were coming back home without knowing exactly the number of kilometers or the average speed
Right.
that actually you ran that morning.
Right.
And it's crazy to see with my eyes of, well, as professor in the field of innovation, how those services were there, their activities were there as well. And in just 10 years, this type of business model entered in our life so pervasively. And I think this is super interesting because on the one hand, if you are an innovation lover, you kind of loved this shift. It's full of opportunities, it's full of services, it's full of trends, it's full of things.
Mm.
On the other side, there are people that are not that into innovation that probably struggled with this transformation in their daily life.
Mm.
I think about my mom. When I was like, okay, let's see if we can buy this on Amazon. And she was like, can we really trust it?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
my aunt that didn't really want to have a WhatsApp, a telephone, a smartphone with a WhatsApp.
Right.
And I think about all those small firms that actually saw these services entering in the game, maybe getting a bit of their margin, maybe challenging the way in which they do many daily activities. And I see that in this transformation, there is somehow a society that had the chance to evolve in an extremely short amount of time in almost every aspect of the daily life. And on the other side, so many different reactions. You see from the regulation that is trying to block this type of companies, of organizations,
Right.
or the smaller businesses that sometimes embrace them, and in some other cases, no, not at all.
Right.
I think this is the beauty of innovation, always seeing this double phase.
That makes a lot of sense. I feel like the sort of signal of reluctance, either from folks who aren't necessarily early adopters or the sort of knee-jerk reaction to regulate something, is almost an indicator or a sign that something innovative or something disruptive is going on. So the way you highlighted that in a platform context is very helpful and a great way, I think, to think about that.
Yeah, what I think is cool about platforms is that they are not really enabling something new. They are enabling a different way of doing things. And this is probably even more challenging for us to understand it, for us as users, as people to understand it.
Right, right. So by definition, then it sounds like you're saying it doesn't have to be a new thing to be innovative. It can just be doing something in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely.
How often do you see those sorts of things baked into the definition of innovation? Like, oh, it has to be a new technology or something that's never been done before versus your broader view?
I think I don't have an empirical evidence for that. I don't have statistics for that. But I kind of feel that we are living in an era, in a period in which this is becoming more and more common.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because over the last decade, innovation has been so powerful from a tech perspective that now we are going through cycles that already happened, but very recently. And so probably we can see these cycles in a much more clearer way in comparison to what it was in the past. But I think this is the key. We are in front of technologies that for sure can change also what we do. But it's becoming more and more common to see a new way of doing things that we were already able to do. On the one hand, in my opinion, it's even more interesting because you are more efficient, you are more effective in a certain ways, and you can familiarize with these things in an easier way because you already know them. But on the other side, I think they are even more, it's scarier in a certain way because you can feel threatened by what you are seeing.
Right.
You can feel that you may lose your job, that you may lose your role. And let's go back to what I was saying about the smaller businesses or even the big businesses that have been challenging, that have been seeing themselves challenged by a platform. And I think this is also what is happening with AI or the metaverse or all these technologies that are kind of entering in our life.
Sure.
And promising to take a piece of what we are doing.
Right, right. Do you see AI as a platform? What is the platform sort of thinking within the world of AI? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolutely sense. Let me just step back for a while. Maybe it's easier if I say what is a platform
Yes.
in our view, and then build it on the word of AI. Let's say that to us a platform is any kind of business, organization, whatever thing that is basically connecting multiple customers. To us, the greatest thing of Airbnb is not the fact that two different set of customers are paying or whatever. The point is that both you that you are, the traveler, and the one that is actually welcoming you in your his or her house are customers in the eyes of the platform. This shift is incredibly powerful. We are used to see that happening in startups, so in digital apps and digital services, but this is a shift that digital technologies can spread everywhere. We are now working a lot with established firms that can think about some of their suppliers or even some of their competitors in certain cases becoming customers if they switch to a platform. And I think this framing is super interesting. So with this definition in mind, if I think about OpenAI, for example, as we know it, looking at ChatGPT, knowing that this sentence will be old in very few weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not really a platform. It's a platform from a technological perspective, but not from a business modeling perspective.
I see.
Because basically the users are just the only set of customers. But they already open up the APIs.
Right, yeah.
Helping, yeah. And this is transforming them directly into a platform. Honestly speaking, what I do see powerful in the world of AI in terms of platform thinking is that I do believe the metaverse, generative AI, and all these technologies that are promising to change our professional and personal life can be read through the eyes, through the lenses of platform thinking. I do believe that we've been already through a number of tech cycles over the last decades. We kind of, not completely, but kind of learn how to handle them, or at least to know that they are coming, they will go through certain phases, and at a certain point we will be again at a maturity phase. But I do believe that over the last 10 years, something changed significantly. Platforms are not a new model. The first example of platform can be found in ancient Persia, 2000 years before Christ. It's the market.
Right.
So it wasn't digital. It wasn't digital.
That's right.
But it was there. What is happening with digital technologies is that platforms can be brought everywhere. And I do believe that taking and trying to assess, to embrace these technologies, putting at the center what we've learned over the last 10 years thanks to the platform revolution, I think that's extremely interesting. And I'm saying this to various potential listeners. I'm thinking about companies that should decide if to ride solo or if to join an existing platform or if to open up with a platform strategy while embracing these technologies. I'm thinking about the policymaker, the regulators that probably need to assess the platform nature of these technologies. And also probably, even though in this phase it may be not the most urgent thing, even to users, deciding if you want to lock in a certain system or in another.
Right.
I think we now have some tools to understand what may happen given the platform nature of this technology.
So much there. That's brilliant. I love the concept of efficiency, talking about efficiency from a platform thinking standpoint, because from a user perspective, that efficiency could blind you to some of the unintended consequences that you might be taking on by buying into the efficiency of the platform. There's another side of that coin. And that's something we don't always consciously think about when we put our information into this app for this specific coffee shop. There's some efficiency when I go to that coffee shop, but what are the unintended consequences What is that efficiency costing me? I don't know if we always think about those things. I love that you mentioned efficiency in that.
With this question, you open two main points. On the one hand, the generator of efficiency, in our opinion, I say our because that's the core of the book in this case.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The book is basically the main idea of the book is, well, I can show it to you here. It's read the past to write the future. That's the subtitle of the book. The main idea is to help innovators to find idle assets within their firm that can foster or trigger a platform transformation. That's the main idea. So it's not really pure efficiency as in a digital marketplace.
Right.
But the main idea is to put at value something that is already there in a kind of circular economy perspective, not necessarily for environmental or social purposes, but at large. On the one hand, that's the main purpose of a platform, in my opinion, to look for efficiency, whatever it means. It can mean different things, but I totally agree with you. It can be dangerous. There is a sort of dark side because we kind of get used to that efficiency, which, my view, is absolutely fine at one condition, that you, as a user, are aware of what is happening.
Yes.
And that's become a choice. I decide that that's fine to me. I want to give you my data because I get a better service.
Right.
I want to sign in this service that's free. That's fine. I understand what are the possible implications.
Right.
And we hope this book can help in this direction. That's our main job as professors, to create awareness in the people we talk with. And unfortunately, I'm still convinced that there is a gigantic lack of knowledge in how these businesses works, in what are the implications of the actions that we do in our digital life.
Right.
And unfortunately, the magazines, the newspapers tend to tell us the dark side in the darkest way possible,
Right.
like painting if everything is terrible.
Yes.
While it's important to create awareness, but then that's my view at least, that you can leave the decision if this is fine or not fine to you as a person, to the end user. So it's important to build the tools to understand what's going on.
That makes perfect sense. And I agree completely. Right now, it's either there's no issue at all and no problem whatsoever, or the sky is falling and this is the worst possible thing that you could ever do. Don't ever give anyone any information. And the truth is somewhere in between. And there's almost sort of a pragmatism that has to be injected into the conversation to allow users to benefit, and also the creators of the platform and the stakeholders on the other side of the platform to benefit. For there to be mutual benefit across all fronts, you have to be pragmatic about what efficiency means, what benefit means, what value means, and how those things are created. Not every value imbalance is manipulative or dangerous or rooted in some sort of negativity. Sometimes those imbalances are just capitalism at work. And I think that's sometimes gets, like you said, reported on in a way that discourages open conversation and experimentation in the capitalist system.
I agree with you. I do believe that the main narrative is that everything is amazing or it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, what the history taught us is that in the end, we will end up in the middle. That's right. Probably what will happen.
That's exactly
with the metaverse, with AI.
Yep, that's right. It will seek homeostasis, right? I'm a chemical engineer. Everything's seeking equilibrium and homeostasis and entropy and all that stuff. I believe all those things are at play in our economic environments as well. And I love the platform thinking sort of framework that you've brought to this conversation, because it allows you to think about those things in a way that you can imagine balance, right? It doesn't have to be exploitative. I can imagine a world where there's balance and everyone benefits in a true platform-driven environment. We've talked about what innovation is. Tell me, what in your mind isn't innovation?
I've been thinking about this as well, but it takes a different meaning after the conversation we just had. The only answer that came to my mind in my view at least, some obvious answer. Everything that is not new, everything that is not happening in a new way.
Right.
But I think there is a bit more. A kind of complementarity to what I said before. To call something innovation, it should, in my view, create value. So it's not innovation if it's not creating value. Obviously, this is opening up a conversation that could last hours. What does value mean? Sure. Value for who?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But linking to what you were just saying, I do believe that we should start talking about, that we could at least start talking about innovation, also talking about a kind of considering a kind of balance in the value created and shared and captured by the various parties. And in this, I think the platform framework can help us a lot. Now, I don't want to enter in a discussion on the single brands, but we can easily think about a number of platforms that have been at the center of discussion in the magazine for years in gigantic scandals. And these companies have been usually treated as the representation of platforms as a whole, on the one hand, and on the second, considered in a very unbalanced way, in a certain way, just focusing on the scandal without considering also the positive impact that those companies and those services had.
Right.
And here there are, in my view, two implications. On the one hand, do not match the model with the brand. So it doesn't mean that if you don't like that platform, you don't like platforms. You know, a model is neither good or bad. You can use it in a good or in a negative way. The second thing is we need to change the way in which we look at the reality around us. If you are in a platform as a user, naturally, because you are in a platform, you are creating value for that platform and for the other parties involved. So I don't really like those sentences like, if you are not paying for it, you are the product. Because it's kind of obvious in a platform. Yeah, you are creating value for the platform as well.
Right.
Airbnb without the host does not exist, without the travelers does not exist. But for sure, the managers, the entrepreneurs that design platforms, but also us as users, should be aware of this and try to assess the kind of value that we get and the value that we are offering in these systems. It's something that we do continuously, writing reviews on Amazon or on TripAdvisor. We are creating value for that system.
Right.
Sometimes we get things for free, but we rarely are able to measure things that look so differently. We still don't have the conversions between the value that we get and we create. But there should always be some kind of balance and some kind of check, at least in the design phase.
Right. I was just thinking, based on what you said, what the role of regulators might be in that environment you just described. I could see where they could play a role where they might hinder that natural balance being sought. I could see a role where they might encourage that natural balance.
Let's put it in this way. I'm happy to be teaching about innovation and not to be taking decision on how to regulate to create regulation on it.
Exactly.
I've been thinking about it a lot. I teach Agile project management as one of the same subjects I cover. I cannot really say that I know it, but I kind of feel that in a sort of Agile approach to regulation, there might be, I would like to say hope, but at least a space to actually find a more effective and efficient way to regulate this type of businesses and a bit technology that is around us. But this is at the theory level. I would have no idea on how to put it in practice. What I can say is that we've been seeing very often innovation blocked by the regulation. And I think this is kind of a pity because it goes in that scary part that I was referring to at the beginning that is absolutely understandable, but the history tells us that very rarely we can stop innovation. We can slow it down. So what is important to say, at least for me, is that we should at least try to embrace models that help us understanding what is going on. I think they are there, but very often, very often, I've seen platforms being treated as linear businesses, as traditional businesses,
Right.
even though it's decades that we know it's not like that. So at least bridging this gap could be a nice next step, in my opinion.
Well said. Well said. I also wonder about, because you made a distinction earlier that I don't know that I always consciously do, which is the difference between a business platform and a technology platform. And I think that's a critical distinction to make, especially when you think about regulation. And then also as you think about innovation by analogy and where you can go next from that conversation and that concept. If I look at a digital platform and think about how I might leverage that as a business platform, take the concept of that business platform and apply it in a physical space, what that might look like, what it might look like as a concept within music or within the arts or things like that. If we get locked in on platform thinking as a technology platform thinking, it feels like we miss a lot of opportunities.
Let me spoil a bit the beginning of the book. We open the book talking about the word platform. And we have a gigantic issue with it. Because the word platforms, if you go in scientific literature, has completely different meanings according to the specific field you enter. And well, I will make quite long story short, but it's in the first chapter, that says platform is a word that if you look on Google will generate an enormous amount of results. But Google also tells you what are people looking usually for with that word. And the first sentence is, what do they mean by platform? This is a very simple way to show how this word that was created to actually align people. That's what words do. I say a word, you understand exactly what I mean, and we go on in the conversation. Well, platform became almost a useless word or a worthless word because it's not aligning ourselves anymore. If you're referring to Amazon AWS as a platform, that's correct from a technical perspective. But it has very little to share with Airbnb. That is a platform in terms of business model. We would call it transactional platform because it's enabling a transaction between parties. Exactly as Spotify does, even though it looks different.
Right.
While if you take, Strava or Twitter, they are actually platforms, but in what we call an orthogonal way. There are still two customers. On the one end is advertisers and final users. In the case of Strava, there are organizations using the anonymous data that the company gather while you go cycling around the world, and you still have two customers. So it's, again, a platforms in terms of business model. But if you go around and you ask for people examples of platforms, you will have, for sure, every type of digital service you can think of, even just a website. Technologies that are used to develop something, that are the usual tech dimension of platforms. You will hear social networks that in a lot of cases have not a platform business model. You will hear apps, no matter what they are, and you will hear also some platforms that are based on a business model. That's why the first part of the book has this read the past as a sort of tagline. We are introducing some words next to the word platform to help differentiating the various typologies. And this can look like a university exercise, but it is very useful because if you've got those words, you can actually use them to write. You can actually use them to design innovation.
Right. Yes.
In that way. It's a tool more than a definition in our view.
That's a great way of thinking about it, a tool rather than a definition. And it's so important. Your train of thought sounds a lot like the train of thought I had about innovation when I started this podcast. It's a word that has been applied to so many different things. It's in danger of losing its intrinsic meaning. You have to put something in front of it or around it to give it context. And I hadn't thought about platform in that same way, but that's exactly what you're describing, and it makes perfect sense. Before I let you go, I'd love to, especially as a professor, to get your thoughts or advice for innovators out there.
I think we are living exciting times. Probably innovation in this era is always exciting. But I do believe the last years kind of changed the gear. It's even more powerful. And teaching innovation since some years now and having seen various definitions, various models explained and I hope understood by people, my suggestion now is slow down when you see whatever coming. We have a bunch of courses on Coursera related to platform thinking. We are going to release in the next week a new chapter of this course that will be titled Platform Thinking for the Metaverse. And I'll be honest, the main leitmotif of the chapter of the series of this online course is almost no one in the world actually understood something about it. Just get ready to understand it. Just have the awareness to step back and to look at the opportunities and the challenges that this technology or set of technologies can actually bring to our life. We can see singers having concerts in the metaverse. Yes, that means that we will have concerts only in the metaverse? No. It means that the future of the metaverse will be live entertainment? No. We have seen games in the metaverse. It means that the future of the metaverse are games? No. It means that these are the early applications. But do you recall the early application of a smartphone? Do you recall the early application of a computer? And it's normal. We need time to actually get comfortable with the new technologies, to actually get in touch with it, to understand them, to take our time to see the opportunities in there, to foster something that in this moment, maybe it's imaginable, but we cannot see. So my suggestion is don't go extreme. Neither it's useless, no one will ever use, neither this is amazing, I got it.
Right.
That's the direction I'm going to see. You can have that, but for the first 5 minutes. Then you step back and you try to have a critical thinking on it and trying to assess it with the tools that are around us. I think this analytical approach would help us in slowing down a bit, but actually exploiting the opportunities that innovation and technologies are bringing and will bring in our life.
Wow, well said. I think that's brilliant. You don't hear innovation and slow down in the same sentence a lot. So it's really great. I love that frame of reference. Daniel Trabucchi, innovation is the spark of life. That is great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I learned a lot, sparked a lot of great thoughts, and I'm looking forward to kind of unpacking this myself. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was absolutely a pleasure talking with you.
All right. Take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at OutlastLLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.